Griffon at Busch Gardens Williamsburg is a Bolliger & Mabillard dive machine. While Griffon was one of the first dive machines to open in North America, I still think it's the best one. So in this video, I will review Griffon and explain why it should not be overlooked when compared to B&M's newer dive machines. In 1998, Bolliger & Mabillard debuted the first dive machine in Oblivion at Alton Towers. This was a new model from B&M with a thrilling and theatrical near-vertical plunge into a tunnel. While Oblivion had a simple layout, the drop was among the best of any coaster. North America wouldn't see their first dive machine until Busch Gardens Tampa opened SheiKra in 2005, but it had a more ambitious layout than the prototype. The ride was taller, technically classifying as a hypercoaster, features a vertical drop, and versions. SheiKra was extremely well received, so it's no surprise that Busch Gardens added another dive machine to their Williamsburg park shortly thereafter. Griffon opened at Busch Gardens Williamsburg for the 2007 season, and it improved further upon SheiKra. The layouts are near identical, but Griffon was 5 feet taller, standing 205 feet or 62.5 meters tall, and Griffon also received floorless trains, which made the harrowing vertical drop even scarier for those in the front row. They left riders really exposed. These floorless trains were added to SheiKra 1 month after Griffon opened, and they've become standard on every dive machine since. Griffon is the most imposing coaster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. While Apollo's Chariot is a tall coaster on its own, and actually features a larger drop, that coaster is out in the woods far from the midway. In fact, many of Busch Gardens Williamsburg's coasters go way out into the woods, so much of their layouts are obscured. But Griffon is front and center. The coaster can be seen from most sections of the park, and much of Griffon hugs the midway, diving below and around pathways, so guests can walk right up next to this imposing attraction. Griffon is located in the France section of the park. The ride replaced the Le Mans Raceway. While the coaster itself isn't really themed, the coaster is very photogenic with its size, graceful maneuvers, and sky blue track. Despite being arguably the most popular attraction at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, Griffon usually has a very manageable wait. Most weekdays, I rarely have to wait more than 15 to 20 minutes, and on weekends, the longest wait I've personally waited in has been a half hour. And the line consistently moves due to the 30-person trains, reasonably fast dispatches, and multi-train operations. If you want to ride in the front row, you may have to wait a little bit longer. Most people understandably want to ride up front for the unobstructed view on the ride's iconic drop. And those visuals are indeed fantastic. But if you want the most forceful ride, you will want to ride Griffon in the back row. While Griffon may have a super short 3-row train, the back definitely has more oomph on the ride's 2 largest drops. Unlike some of the newer dive machines that have the tighter vest restraints, Griffon has the original B&M over-the-shoulder restraints, and I much prefer these restraints on a dive machine. While the vest restraints do hug your body and can detract from the airtime in the ride's main drops, Griffon's over-the-shoulder restraints are much looser, at least for someone with my body type. This allows riders to float out of their seat a bit more on the vertical drops, which is the sensation I crave on these dive machines. The benefit of vest restraints is that they can eliminate the risk of headbanging, but Griffon, like many of the dive machines, is glass smooth, so headbanging never is an issue. Griffon begins with a turn out of the station, and then you ascend a very steep lift hill. The lift has an angle of 47 degrees, which is steeper than any drop on a decent chunk of roller coasters. Once you reach the top, you get a wide variety of views. At first, you get a gorgeous panoramic view of the park. Then you can see Chesapeake Bay off in the distance. But as you approach the drop, the scenic views disappear and are replaced with a bird's eye view of the nearby Anheuser-Busch beer factory. I sort of wish the drop was positioned towards Chesapeake Bay, so you could spend more time admiring that view, but this is a very minor critique. This turn leads into the ride's signature holding brake, and this is one of the most ingenious features B&M has ever added to any of their roller coasters. Being held above the ride's largest drop catches the eye of most guests off-ride. And on-ride, it really builds the anticipation. It is a surreal feeling staring straight down at the ground for a few seconds when you're 200 plus feet in the air. The view is most effective in the front row or on an edge seat, but the suspense is palpable in any row. After a few seconds, the holding brake releases and the thrills begin. The first drop delivers several seconds of sustained floater airtime the whole way down. The drop is pure bliss, but is extra special if you're in that back row. Riders in the back row are whipped over the super sharp apex of the drop, so back row riders will get forcefully lifted out of their seat before experiencing that sustained floater airtime. The other rows will gently lift riders out of their seat on the drop. The drop dives under a bridge, giving a solid near miss. Now I know dive machines are often called forceless, but this pullout has some strong and sustained positive Gs, and I usually start graying out in this pullout. The ride pulls a maximum of 4 Gs, and I'm almost certain this is where it occurs. I usually don't regain my vision until I'm at the apex of the falling element, the 146 foot or 44 meter tall Immelmann. This giant inversion maintains the positive Gs from the pullout through the ascent. Now the flip itself isn't anything special in most rows, but if you're in the back row, you get a tiny pop of airtime as the train uncorks back towards the ground. You then twist up into the mid-course brake run. Front row riders will get a tiny pop of airtime in this element, but the other rows will miss out on those negative Gs. The mid-course trim then hits very hard, and it really slows down Griffin's train, which sort of gives Griffin a pseudo holding brake effect on the subsequent drop. The second half kicks things off with a second vertical plunge, this one standing 130 feet or 40 meters tall. While it is shorter than the first drop, the sustained floater airtime is just as good. And as before, back row riders are more forcibly lifted out of their seat for the start of the descent. The pullout from this drop delivers another solid dose of positive Gs. The Gs are not as sustained as long as the first drop's pullout though, and this is followed by the ride's second and final inversion, another Immelmann. This one is smaller than the first, but it's unfortunately a rather forceless and forgettable element. Griffin then climbs back up the hillside over a little speed hill that delivers some solid floater airtime throughout the train. And this leads into another picturesque moment on Griffin, the splashdown. Fins on the back of the train create this massive splash that can drench onlookers, and if you're towards the back of the train, you'll even get a light spritzing. It's an exciting visual off-ride, but it can be a bit hard to see on-ride unless you awkwardly turn your head 180 degrees backwards. Griffin then glides around a slow turn and then has one last surprise for riders, a small hop into the brake run. And this element gives a decent pop of airtime, which is a good way to end Griffin's 3,108 feet or 947 meters of track. Two of the biggest criticisms with dive machines are that they are one-trick ponies and have poor pacing. Griffin is far from a one-trick pony. Griffin features not one, but 2 great drops, plus a few airtime hills in the second half. The inversions are not elite, but they do add some variety. Griffin is a bit deficient in the pacing department, mostly due to the mid-course trim and some filler elements, but it is above average for most dive machines. So what would I rate Griffin? I would give this dive machine an 8 out of 10. As I mentioned earlier, Griffin is my favorite dive machine, narrowly edging out Yukon Striker. Griffin has 2 great drops and a unique second half with some bunny hills you don't really get on the other dive coasters. Plus, this coaster is extremely re-rideable, and it's one I usually will ride multiple times every time I visit Busch Gardens. So those are my thoughts on Griffin, the B&M dive machine at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. Have you been on Griffin? Do you also think it's the best dive coaster out there? I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this coaster down in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, I'd appreciate if you gave this video a like, and you considered subscribing, because there'll be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canopy Coaster. Thanks for watching.